Okay, so it's 5 minutes after 10 in my time zone. I'll get started. Those of you who are in the Zoom room with me, you already know who I am, but anyone who's watching live, my name is Lauren. I'm an academic coach, which means I help students with their academics as a tutor, primarily with communication, like reading, writing, listening, speaking, all the general English communication skills. However, I integrate personal development skills too. So I help students if they're dealing with academic stress, anxiety, procrastination, time management, and also helping them explore self-awareness and self-reflection to help them grow, not just as a student, but to be able to discover more about their passions, their interests, so that if they do pursue academia, or if they decide that they don't want to pursue academia, that they feel confident in what they decide to do next in life. And so today, I'll be focusing on skills for writing right, and talking about what that means, writing right, and doing some exercises as well in this workshop. And for those of you watching live, if you would like to participate on the panel and have open conversations as we go through this, the Zoom number is right here at the bottom. So 229-152-9294. Okay, so we're going to get started with a warm-up writing exercise. I'm going to give you guys 3 minutes. I'll take care of the timer, so you don't have to worry about that. 3 minutes starting now. You have 5 words, and write a story with those 5 words. Any story at all. Can be made up, it can be a dream, it can be a memory, anything at all. So the timer has already begun, and I will let you know when it's finished. Feel free to modify the words if you need to. So instead of lemon, you can say lemons. Instead of settle, you can say settler, drift, drifting, etc. You can modify the words any way you need to help you with your story. Feel free to modify the words if you need to. So instead of lemon, you can say lemons. Instead of settle, you can say settler, drift, drifting, etc. You can modify the words any way you need to help you with your story. Feel free to modify the words if you need to. So lemon, you can say lemons. Instead of settle, you can say settler, drift, drifting, etc. You can modify the words any way you need to help you with your story. All right, guys, just having some feedback issues. Okay, so we still have 1.5 minutes left. For those of you watching live, at the end of this, feel free to enter your story into the chat if you want to share. All right, and so that's time. So now, anyone would like to share? You don't have to, but you're more than welcome to share your little blurb if you have one. If you do, just start talking right away, as I can't see your faces, so I can hear you. No shares?
That seemed a lot more tricky than some of the ones we've done before.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought so too, actually. So I did this one as well. And yeah, I was it for you, John, was it the time or was it the words?
The words, I'm struggle to find a connection.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was a
Lemons settling in a snowdrift. As they, can I imagine a lemon spinning and then settling in a snowdrift?
Yeah.
But then what's the connection with a calendar? What?
I know, yeah,
I'll
this
read
one,
mine.
yeah, these words are a lot more disconnected than the ones that we've done previously together. Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes it more creative that way.
I'd be glad to read mine.
Yeah, sure, Mike. Go ahead.
Okay. I watched the lemon seed settle to the bottom of my iced tea glass. The calendar on the wall told me that I have drifted for months and needed to spin into a new direction.
That's good. That's better than mine.
Nice.
That one actually kind of makes sense. Anyone else? If not, that's totally fine. You don't have to share. Anyone who's on the live chat feed, anyone who's monitoring that, if you see anyone who shares a story, let me know.
I think mine is a little bit long.
Okay.
If it because I wrote it as like a story, so it goes like tick tock goes the clock. Time passes by and days never settle. Looking on my calendar, it was a Sunday. That means a perfect way to start my day with lemon water that drifts my mind and relaxes the body. But I guess Sunday drifts away faster than every other day. I think that Earth spins faster on Sundays.
Nice. Always poetic, Himanshu. Your writing is always so poetic. Good. Lovely. Okay. All right, so we're going to keep moving along so we don't run out of time. But again, if you do want to share, just pop it into the chat. And if we have time at the end, we'll take a look at it. Okay, so writing skills for writing right. Simply put, it's all about practice. And I know a lot of you are probably rolling your eyes, especially if you're a student who's watching this or someone who's practicing for an exam. This is the answer that everyone likes to give is practice. So I know you've heard it before and you're probably thinking it's a boring answer at this point, but we're going to be looking at this idea of practice in a different way. So we're not going to be looking at practicing writing as a skill that you master for, like verb agreements and grammar and sentence structure, things like that. Instead, we're going to be looking at it as a form of communication and expression and what it means to practice writing when we look at it in that form. So what does that mean? A fair example, I think, to compare this is the difference when you're practicing speaking versus conversation. When we practice speaking, whether it's for public speaking or just speaking in general, we think of it in terms of building a vocabulary, practicing pronunciation, articulation, and again, grammar rules. Okay, so it's a lot about all these nitpicky little details that we're practicing and memorizing to use to be called good speakers or proper speakers. However, if we're practicing conversation, that's totally different. So when you need to converse with someone, you have to kind of glaze over making mistakes and not really focus on that and just jump right in and practice how you're expressing yourself, how you are present as a communicator, and that includes listening skills. So when it comes to writing, we can look at it like that. So there's again the difference of looking at the grammar rules, the sentence structure, and vocabulary and spelling and everything like that. But then there's, okay, how do we become better writers when we just practice on how we're communicating through writing and how we're expressing our ideas and our thoughts through writing? So the first one that we'll look at is the expression. How do I express myself through writing? And I narrow this down with a more specific question of why exactly are you expressing yourself through writing? For what purpose? So, you know, why writing? Why not visual art or music or speaking or something else? So why do you have to do this through writing? Now, in some cases, it will be a preference. In other cases, it will be a necessity. But if you can ask yourself that question, so if you have a project on the go right now, or you have something that you're working on where you know that you're going to have to write something, ask yourself, what purpose does it serve as as an expression in writing? And once you start to examine that question and get some answers, you'll notice that it determines, or it starts to influence and determine what your writing voice will be, what the style will be, how you're presenting these thoughts and ideas, what the structure is going to look like from beginning to end, and it will also determine the length, the word count. All right, so we're going to do another writing exercise right away to help us practice this idea of writing with purpose and how purpose will determine, again, how you're expressing yourself. So get another piece of paper ready or get a document open. So the first one, I'm going to give you guys, again, 3 minutes to work on this. 3 minutes is very short for this first description, so just focus on what you can accomplish in those 3 minutes. No pressure. You don't have to have a complete description by the end of the 3 minutes. But you're going to first describe what you literally see in this picture. So from corner to corner, the elements that are filling up this rectangle space. So you're describing it in a way that if you were to send this as an email or a letter to your reader, and assuming your reader is an artist, that they could read your description and then recreate it. All right, so timing has begun. And I'll let you focus. Okay, 30 seconds left. Okay. So that was 3 minutes for the first one. Now we're going to hold off on sharing until we do the second step to this. So right away, you're going to describe the picture again, but this time you're going to describe it in terms of what the picture makes you think of, made me feel when you're looking at it, and why. So again, this might start to evoke some memories or a dream or a story that it comes to mind when you're looking at this picture. It's totally up to you, but so this time around you're describing it in a different way, not what you literally see, but what it makes you think of, what it reminds you of. So the timer has already begun, another 3 minutes, and then we'll pause and we can discuss what we came out of the 2 exercises. Thirty seconds left. Okay. So I'm going to pause here. I'm going to exit this view screen so that it's easier for me to talk to you guys now. So John, do I have to stop sharing my screen? Do I just switch back to regular mode? Yeah, okay. Okay, all right. So really quickly, any remarks on comparing the 2 descriptions side to side? Now, I know that the time was very short for these. Normally we do these for like 5 or even 10 minutes long in a regular workshop. But just considering the time, I crunched it down to 3 minutes. But with that exercise, did you guys notice any differences in your writing in terms of voice, presentation style, length, things like that? Yeah, Mike, I see you nodding your head. You're on mute. I think you're still on mute.
There we go. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I was hitting my space bar. It's supposed to unmute me, and it didn't. On the first one, I was talking about the color of the ship, the sails furled, the sky partly cloudy. There was a red and white flag in there towards the middle. There was a pine tree limb in the upper left, things of that nature, because we were doing that. On the second one, I'm talking about the old yet well-kept pirate ship, or maybe it was the Mayflower that sits at dock, ready to invite curiosity seekers on board. The ship stands dressed out with furled sails, just waiting to be loosed and sent on its next adventure. So 2 different styles, but 2 things I was trying to do.
Yeah.
And I decided to go, because I don't like writing, then I gave it like almost a list on both of them. So different contents, but they're both listish.
Yeah. Okay. Farhan, how did it go for you? You don't have to share if you don't want to, but what was your take on it?
No, in fact, I'll just copy paste if you like. English is not my native language, so you may find some errors, but I actually want to start writing well, but I'm not there yet. So.
So this first one, that's your the literal description of what you see, the elements in the picture.
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah, Farron, would you mind reading it so that the Facebook people can get it?
All right, sure. It says the first one is a sailboat is stationed at the port with all its sails rolled up. There's a view of some branches of palm tree that is partially blocking the view of the boat. The view of the boat almost covers the entire view in the picture. So this was the first description. And the second, regarding feelings, was the picture makes me want to go on a vacation, sitting on a boat, enjoying the good company of my family and friends, laughing and joking while we enjoy our journey to a beautiful island.
Nice. Yeah, so very different. And that's essentially what the purpose of this exercise was for. So I'm gonna share my screen again and show you guys a table. Basically, what happens is we start to pick up on the differences that you guys notice yourselves. When it comes to voice, for me, and I think for most other writers, the description one is much more technical versus the other one can be more lyrical, more poetic. Style, the first one for me, becomes very direct and analytical versus the second one, it's much more narrative. There's a story behind it. The presentation, objective versus subjective. And then finally, length. This one really depends on where your preference lies as a writer. So for myself, if I'm doing a technical description, I'm a lot more detailed and like specific, and so it tends to create a longer document. But if it's more narrative, I'll be selective in what I'm describing, which in the end might make it a shorter document. But this could be the opposite for you, depending on where your strengths and weaknesses lie. And this is a really good exercise for pointing out the difference in purpose and how our writing changes when our purpose changes. Okay, so next let's go back to this question of, how do we express ourselves through writing? And again, it's about practice, but one of the things that we can do to practice is creating the habit of journaling. The reasons why journaling really works is, well, first, because it's private, so you can make mistakes and it doesn't matter. You're learning how to communicate with yourself. And there's a much different direction that your interests take, when you don't have another person there to give feedback. It's just you. So you can really focus on where you want to explore, what ideas you want to experiment with, and how deep you can go with that. This helps build your self-awareness as well, but particularly if you're brave enough to go back to earlier entries of your journal and take a look at how you were writing or what you were writing about on a particular day. You start to uncover patterns, manners in which you choose to talk about certain things, whether it's an event that happened or just a random thought or an emotion. And so you're learning more about yourself, but through your writing, and in turn, learning about yourself as a writer, your strengths and weaknesses. Finally, this last one I find really fascinating. And this can happen outside of journaling when you're writing, but I find that it happens all the time with journaling, simply because it's a free flow of writing. So when you're doing a free write, there's 3 things that are going on inside your head all at the same time. So on one part of your brain, you're creating, or you're formulating these new thoughts and ideas that are springing into existence inside of your head. The other part of your brain then has to start organizing those random words and ideas into cohesive strings of thoughts that create a conversation in your head or a dialogue in your head. Then there's the other part of your brain that has to then start recording it, because meanwhile, the first part of your brain is still sparking to life with new ideas and new thoughts. There's always new content coming into existence in your head, but your hand or your fingers can't move as quickly as these thoughts. So this third part of your brain has to record it so that your hand can keep up. And if you don't practice this kind of writing skill where you are exercising these 3 parts of your brains at once, and then you try to jump into sitting it through an exam where you have to write an essay on the spot in less than 20 minutes, then you're going to be struggling. You're going to be losing those thoughts. As soon as a new thought pops into your head, you're going to lose it. You're going to forget it, because your hand or your recording part of your brain is going to be too focused on, okay, what is it that I just said? And I have to get it out on paper before I forget that one too.
Yeah, Lauren, can I jump in for a second?
Yeah, sure.
Or for the people that are new to writing, what is journaling?
Journaling, it's writing in a private notebook. And it's different for everyone. So some people enjoy writing about their thoughts or their feelings. Other people enjoy writing about what they did that day. Other people enjoy writing about what they want to do tomorrow or what they dream of in the future. But it's literally just a dump of whatever's in your head in that moment, and you're just putting it down on paper. For some, like when I work with students on journaling, I also say, if you don't know what to write about, just Google for random topics. You don't have to have a specific thing to talk about. Like if you don't know what to talk about of your day, or if you don't feel like putting that down, sometimes there's blockage blockages, if you have a fear of talking about yourself on paper and things like that, I mean, you can just start by Googling random topics or questions, and then just running with that. And that's where journaling and free writing come hand in hand, and they really sit well together. So you could have a journal that's a bit of both, like one day you're talking about this horrible thing that happened or this wonderful thing that happened, and then the next day you put in a random question like cats versus dogs, and then you just free write on that. But generally I always recommend 5 to 15 minutes. If you can fit in 15 minutes, then great, but I know that some of us don't have that much time. So even 5 minutes a day is a great start. And the more you do this, the more that these 3 things here, this one, the exercising 3 skills, creating, organizing, recording, the faster that your brain will be able to start handling those 3 tasks at once. And so that when you do have to go and sit down for an exam, or if you do have to write an email to a client really rapidly because you're running out of time at the end of your day, you're not sitting there for an hour trying to figure out, what you need to say, or, oh, I forgot that important thing that I meant to mention or follow up on. And so your writing can happen faster but still with the same amount of attention and detail to it. Any other questions? Okay, cool. All right. So then the next one is about the side of the communication. So how do I communicate through writing? And the question that I ask here is, what exactly are you trying to communicate? So this is about being specific on the topic that you're trying to communicate about. All right, I'm just going to do that so that I can see people's faces. All right, and this is best done through pre-writing. So if you're working on a manuscript or an essay or a blog or something like that, hopefully my video, there we go. Pre-writing is a really essential step to writing. So we're going to start talking about that. Okay, so what is pre-writing? Many times pre-writing doesn't actually look like writing because it can be quite visual. It can literally be doodles if you want it to be doodles. Sometimes I use Post-it notes and I just put them on my wall and move them around. It can be writing if you wanted it to be, but it doesn't have to be. Essentially, though, pre-writing is the activity of planning out what you're going to write about. Is pre-writing really necessary? And why? So I would say yes, it's absolutely necessary to pre-write. And the reason why is because, well, first off, it gives you a starting point. So if you're someone who opens up a new document and you kind of get stuck staring at the blank screen, or if you're having writer's block, or if you're procrastinating because you don't know how to begin with your writing task, then pre-writing will erase that problem completely, because it doesn't matter where you start. It doesn't matter what the first word is. All you have to do is just start writing, and it doesn't even have to be on that topic. Pre-writing can be on a completely different thing. You can, sometimes when I was having trouble with writing something, I would just begin with, I have no idea what I'm writing about. I don't want to write about this. I don't know anything about this topic. I'd rather be writing about this. And maybe I'd go off on a tangent, but at least I started, right? I had designated some time to work on this manuscript. I sat down and I wrote something. So that next time I'm that much closer to getting to the content that I need to write about. When you do pre-writing, it also shows you what you need to know more about, what you already feel comfortable in communicating about with this particular topic, and where you need to go investigate and do some more research. So yeah, I say here I strongly recommend, but I would just say, like, absolutely do pre-writing all the time. Any thoughts on this? Any comments, people who have experienced this issue before? No? Okay. I'm gonna,
Yeah, certainly lists and mind mapping, really
yeah,
just random ideas and links to links to links and a web of
yeah,
connections, just
yeah.
in a random order is really good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so here are some forms of pre-writing that are really common. Brainstorming and mind mapping, I think, are the go-to pre-writing forms that a lot of people use. So John, as you said, just listing random ideas. Mind mapping is, you know, you have the bubble and then you have a line goes to another bubble and then you keep branching out kind of like a spider web. Branching, so sometimes this looks like a flow chart where you're starting to organize your ideas. So branching and mind mapping, visually speaking, they can look the same, but the purpose of the branching is to help you organize your ideas, because when you start to, so if you have categories and then you have subcategories and then you have key points to discuss of those subcategories and then evidence or citations or events, you know, whatnot, you might start to notice that some of these things repeat or might flow better if you move them around. So with the branching, it allows you to play around with the structure. What is the structure from beginning to end of your manuscript or essay going to look like as you're connecting the flow of your content? The preliminary cues. So this is a really good one. I think that it often gets overlooked or underestimated because it seems so simple, but it's actually really helpful. So if you can just simply ask, like, what am I writing about? When does this topic occur? Where does this topic occur? You know, things like that. Of course, you can adapt it so that it fits with what you're writing on. The who, this has two parts to it. So there's the who of who is involved within the writing itself, like who are you talking about? Are you talking about a population of people? Are you talking about a specific person? Are you talking about a character that you've created? But then there's the who of who is your reader, right? Who are you trying to communicate to? And keep that in mind, because that's really important at the end of the day. And then the how and the why. Okay. The free writing I talked about, because this is very similar to the journaling. So the key here is that it's uninterrupted. It's an uninterrupted writing flow. So ideally, you don't want your pen or pencil to stop moving. So even if you finish a sentence and you're not really sure what how the next sentence starts in that flow, well, then you write that. I don't know what the next word is going to be, and you just keep going. That's so, yeah, in this sense, it's to actually do the act of writing. So to not get stuck in your head with the writing, but to actually be putting words out there, even if the words themselves don't make sense. So there's different intentions with all of these forms of pre-writing. And then the looping. So this is where you have taken, you've done the first 5, and maybe you see a common theme or an idea that reoccurs, or something that really like caught you off guard. You know, you weren't expecting to write that thing down. And so with the looping, you just take that idea or that concept and then you explore it some more. Maybe you do the same pre-writing form again with it, or maybe you try a new one. But on that note, it's important that you do all of these pre-writing forms. So don't, if you know, as I said before, a lot of like the brainstorming and the mind mapping are really popular. And that's great. If that's what you do now and it works for you, then keep doing it. But sorry about that. But try the other ones as well, because it will keep giving you more insight and it's going to keep challenging you as a writer. You don't want to repeat the same thing, the same skills in your writing over and over and over again, because then you're never going to grow as a writer. Okay, so we're going to wrap up. Actually, before we do this, are there any questions about what we've covered so far? Or any comments or concerns? No, I think we're good. Okay, wonderful. So we'll wrap up with an exit writing exercise. So this is for a bit of self-reflection. This one you don't have to share. You can keep it private, but I do strongly recommend that you actually write this one out. So don't just read the questions and then think about them in your head. Do the writing, because you tend to find out more stuff, or you tend to discover things that you might not want to discover about yourself. Like, you'll be more honest, basically, when you have to actually physically write out the words. So first question, how often do you make a habit of writing? Not including emails or text messaging, so other practices of writing. Is this like a daily thing? Is it once in a week thing? Is it a never thing unless someone tells me to do it? Number two, for you personally, is writing an acquired skill that you use on an as-needed basis? Or is it a developing skill that you maintain? And lastly, what is one thing you learned today about writing or about yourself as a writer? That one's open-ended. Okay, so yeah, so take the next 5 minutes and just enjoy this writing entry. This is your first journal entry for the day. Okay, so as you're finishing up this exit exercise, I just wanted to share a little bit of my own answers to these questions. I know I said, you guys don't have to answer because this is a self-reflective exercise. It's for you personally, but I wanted to give a little bit of my own answers to help, listeners out there who might feel like they're really struggling with their writing. This idea of writing right, I'd like to say, there is no right, right way, because when we're really looking at writing as a form of communication and expression, you're communicating like what you want to communicate, right? It's for you to get something out there to the person that you're trying to communicate to, and it's your way, it's your own form of expression. So there is no wrong way of doing that. So be authentic to yourself when you want to say something or write something. In terms of, how do you get there? It was, as I said, it's about practice. It's about investing in yourself to develop the confidence and the skills that you need in order to feel free to express yourself the way that you need to when you want to get something across to another person. And so for me, in answer to the first question, I'd like to say that I do it every day. Sometimes I do it every day. But I think on the most part, I'm doing it every other day, maybe 3 times a week, where I actually sit down with a journal and spend 15 minutes in writing in that journal, or doing something creative for fun. And I'm still working on doing that more, right? So I'm always trying to improve myself as well. Even though I'm helping students do this, I'm still working on myself as well, because that's important to me, that I'm always developing. And that kind of leads into my answer for the second one, where for me it's a developing skill, because as I change, as I grow more mature and I get more experience, and my my ideas and my values change as I grow, my form of communication and expression needs to grow with me. And so that means that my writing skills are going to continue to develop all the time. So if you're feeling like, I'm not a good writer, I don't know how to write, maybe that's true for you right now in this moment, but that doesn't need to be the box that you put yourself in, right? A lot of us, when we go through school, we kind of start categorizing ourselves as, oh, I'm good at writing, I'm good at math, or whatever. But with writing, you can be a good writer. You just don't need to compare yourself to other people who, when you see their writing, you're like, oh, they're so beautiful when they write, right? But remember, it's your form of expression, so you can develop it in the way that you need to develop it for yourself. And then the last one, something that I learned is that, well, this is more something that I learned as I was putting this presentation together, is that everyone is capable of writing effectively, which is, was the main purpose for me wanting to do this presentation, was to help people realize that that they can become effective writers. They can learn the skills to get their ideas across in writing and not feel limited in that respect. So to wrap up, I want to allow people to ask questions. So this goes for the listeners who are live as well. If